The Hinterkaifeck murders remains one of the most chilling and baffling unsolved crimes in history. It took place in March at a remote farmstead located about kilometers, approximately, miles from the nearest village of Schwaben, Bavaria, Germany. The farm, known as Hinterkaifeck, was isolated, surrounded by dense forests which made it a peaceful yet vulnerable place for a family to live. The victims were the Gruber family, Andreas Gruber, a 63-year-old farmer, his wife Kazilia, who was 72, their daughter Victoria Gruber, 35, who had been living with them, and her two children, Keith is 7, and Joseph 2. The family maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44, who had started working for the family only a short time before the murders, was also killed. The killings were brutal. Each of the family members was bludgeoned with a mattock, a hand tool that resembles a pickaxe in a savage attack, and some were also strangled with their own clothing. The killer appears to have been methodical in his actions. After committing the murders, the perpetrator didn't flee immediately. Instead, it's suspected that the killer stayed on the property for several days. Neighbors reported seeing lights on in the windows of the farm for a few nights after the crime, but no one investigated. The murder was discovered on April 1, 1922, when the Gruber's neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, went to the farm to check on the family after not hearing from them. Upon arrival, he found the bodies in different areas of the house. The bodies of Andreas and Kazilia Gruber were discovered in the living room. Victoria Gruber was found in her bed with the two children. Maria Baumgartner, the maid, was found in her room. The fact that no one had seen or heard anything suspicious in the days leading up to the discovery led to the first unnerving theory. Could the killer have stayed in the house undetected? One of the most disturbing elements of the case is the suspicion that the murderer may have continued to live in the house after committing the murders. Neighbors claim to have seen lights on in the windows for several nights after the killings, and the farm animals were fed. The family's dog was also cared for, and meals appear to have been prepared in the kitchen. It's possible the murderer hid within the house for several days, undetected, perhaps even sleeping in the barn or attic, before eventually escaping or dying. Another strange aspect was the lack of forced entry. The front door of the house was locked and the windows were intact, suggesting that the killer had access to the farm in a way that didn't require force. This detail led investigators to believe that the killer might have been someone who was familiar with the Gruber's lifestyle, perhaps a disgruntled worker, a relative, or someone with personal ties to the family. Several theories and suspects have emerged over the years. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, he was one of the first people to discover the crime, but his involvement in the case has remained suspicious. Schlittenbauer had been romantically involved with Victoria Gruber and was believed by some to be the father of her son, Joseph. He helped search for the family, but later became a prime suspect due to his conflicting statements and his emotional outbursts during the investigation. It was suggested that his possible motive could have been revenge or jealousy over Victoria's relationship with other men. However, despite his initial suspicion, there was no direct evidence to connect him to the murders. A family member or former worker, some believe the killer may have been someone familiar with the Gruber family, someone who knew the layout of the house and farm. The theory is that the killer might have been an insider, a disgruntled relative or worker who harbored resentment toward the family. There was speculation that Andreas Gruber's son, who had lived with the family but had left prior to the killings, could have been involved, though this theory also remains unsupported by evidence. The unknown outsider, another theory, is that the killer was an outsider, someone who was passing through the area and decided to commit the murders. The fact that the family lived in isolation and that no one was heard or seen near the house immediately before or after the murders makes this theory plausible, but again, there's no evidence to confirm it. A motive for robbery. Some researchers have suggested that the killer may have been after money or valuables. However, the farm was largely impoverished, and nothing of value was reported missing from the house, which weakens the idea of a robbery gone wrong. This theory doesn't account for the brutal nature of the crime or the fact that no personal items were taken. In the wake of the murders, police investigations were launched, but they were stymied by the lack of evidence and conflicting statements from those involved. No suspects were arrested, and the crime went cold. Forensics were relatively primitive at the time, and though the police questioned a number of individuals, none could be conclusively tied to the murders. The case has remained unsolved for over a century, and there are numerous theories and speculations about what happened. The lack of definitive clues has contributed to its status as one of Germany's most famous and unnerving true crime cases. The remote location of the farm, combined with the chilling possibility that the killer may have been living on the property afterward, has given the case an almost mythical quality. The legacy of the Hinterkaifeck murders has also been cemented in popular culture and true crime history. Its unresolved nature continues to haunt many, as the bizarre and brutal nature of the crime leaves more questions than answers. Despite extensive public interest and investigations over the years, no conclusive evidence has surfaced to shed light on the killer's identity or their motive. As such, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most unsettling and mysterious unsolved crimes in history.